Hello, and welcome to this airtime interview as part of our special week dedicated to pilots. My name is Michael Jonga, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to conduct this interview during this week when we mark International Pilots Day. We'll be bringing you some special reports and interviews from across the world as we take a deeper look into the role of pilots in our world today. Today, we have the opportunity to meet Cathay Pacific's Captain Obet Mazinyi. Born in Harare, Zimbabwe, Obet's parents moved to Zambia shortly after, and that is where his pilot career began at the Zambia Air Services Training Institute. After acquiring his private pilot's license, he joined the British Airways Flying College, located at Hamble in Southampton, where he graduated in early 1981 with a UK commercial pilot's license and instrument rating. After working with Zambia Airways on the Boeing 747 as a systems pilot, as they were called then, he joined Air Zimbabwe, the national airline, at the end of 1982. In Air Zimbabwe, he rose to the rank of captain on the BAE 146-200 and then the Boeing 707. He also became a training captain during that time. And it was in 1989 that he left Air Zimbabwe to captain Air Hong Kong's Boeing 707 fleet, flying out of Kai Tak Airport. Today, he remains based in Hong Kong and is a senior instructor, examiner, and check captain with Cathay Pacific Airways for the Boeing 747-400 and 747-800. He has spent 31 years working with Cathay Pacific Group, and in recent years, he has built a vibrant following on social media of almost 70,000 followers. Here he shares a close-up experience right from the cockpit, together with snippets of aviation knowledge, especially about his beloved Queen of the Skies. He's been married to his wife, Percy, for 29 years now. Obet, it's a pleasure to host you here on Airtime. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on your forum here. Thank you.
I think it's worth starting with the background we share, as we both originally come from Zimbabwe but are now living elsewhere.
Yeah.
One could argue that young people in Zimbabwe don't have that much exposure to aviation. So could you paint a picture for us of what sparked your passion for our industry?
Yeah, I think for me, my first foray into this was when my parents moved from what was then Southern Rhodesia to Zambia because of all the issues that were going on, obviously. I think what happened was they took me to a school that was conveniently placed about 2 kilometers away from Lusaka International Airport. So at break time, I used to spend my time watching aeroplanes from the break field and watch aeroplanes in the distance. In those days, it used to be VC-10s and that type of aircraft. While my friends were running around playing, I was watching aeroplanes. And from then on, basically, I just wanted to fly. I just wanted to fly. Yeah.
And as you progressed with your aviation dreams, was there ever a time when people, stood in your way and said, "Oh, but you can't do this. It's unconventional. Pick another career"? How did you nurture that passion in the early stages of your career?
Well, the thing is, aviation is not one of those careers that people talk about even at schools. It's getting more and more now. But in those days, you can imagine in Zambia, let alone Zimbabwe in those days, to talk about aviation. It was one of those preserves of the white expatriates that were in the country at the time, because it was sort of left as the preserve of the people that came from Europe and so on. They were the ones that could fly airplanes. Basically, Africans couldn't. That was the sort of thinking in those days. But even today, if you look around at even the basic application form or the basic form you fill in at any agency or medical form or anything, if you look at all the careers that they put there, aviation is not one of them. So you can see how aviation is normally left, even when you're not doing anything to do with aviation. If you go to an immigration department to fill in what your profession is, they'll have everything there except pilot. Yeah.
And when starting your pilot career, it's really well known for being incredibly expensive. Did you experience any obstacles, especially starting your pilot career in Africa?
Yes, I did, because there weren't any schools. In fact, this Zambia Air Service Training Institute had just started a few years earlier, and it was a government school funded by the government of Zambia at the time. And of course, funding for just a single pilot is costly. To train one single pilot, you could train up to 3 or 4 doctors when you could only train one pilot. You could train 10 lawyers for the cost of training one pilot. So that's how expensive it is to train a pilot. But I managed to get a scholarship, which was a Zambian college then, and I did my PPL there. While I was there, Zambia Airways was looking for young pilots to train, to send to the United Kingdom. And what happened was the easiest people to pick were the people that had already had PPLs, which meant Zambia Airways would have a cheaper amount to pay for us if they sent us to England, having already pre-qualified with the PPL. So they effectively got a reduced course, and we ended up having a slightly reduced course when we went to the UK to do the course. So everything was sponsorship. So the difficulties youngsters have today with funding are the same as they were even then.
And just talking on you getting that sponsorship, I believe you were part of a selection of 3,000 pilots who had to be selected. And how did that work out for you?
Yeah, I'll never forget that interview, because they wanted 10 people. There were 3,000 of us. So the interview was over 3 days. The first day was more aptitude tests, a bit of maths, a bit of science, and so on. Basically an exam that you had to pass. So we got through that. Once you got through that, they whittled it down and you were called in for the next day. And the next day was more of a formal interview to find out what sort of character you were. And these were mostly sort of what would be today the HR team, looking at what sort of person you were to see if you really wanted to fly. But I always remember getting through the interview and the very, very last question. In those days, you know, the most popular thing that people did is they went to discotheques. Discos, as they were called. They're not called discos anymore. People, you guys now call it clubbing, and we go to the club and all that. In those days, people went to discos or discotheques. So the very last question, one of the HR people asked me, because he knew that a lot of people can't spell. They couldn't spell then, and they can't even spell even more now. When you look at the sort of shorthand that people use when they're texting, it's ended up with people that a whole generation of people that really can't spell. So anyway, so the last question I was asked was, Obet, could you spell for us the word discotheque? Now, the majority of people spelled it as D-I-S-C-O-T-E-K.
Okay.
Because that's how they said it, discotheque.
Okay.
But it actually doesn't end with a K. It ends with a Q-U-E. So I spelled it. And he looked at me and he said, oh, somebody that can spell. And that was my last question. He just said, thank you very much. We'll be in touch. And of course, the next morning I got the call to say I'd got through. The next phase was to go through the medical checks and medical exam. And that was it. I was on my way.
I think that's a very inspiring story. And I think, you know, just going to 1989, it's fair to say that you took a major leap of faith and you found yourself in the Far East as one of the first Black African pilots to join Air Hong Kong. And you landed there because of the involvement of a former pilot you flew with in Africa. Could you tell us how that story unfolded?
Captain Dave Warburton used to be the chief instructor or chief training captain in Air Zimbabwe. And he was headhunted previously to become the chief pilot of Air Hong Kong in Hong Kong. So he left Zimbabwe then and went to Hong Kong, and he was in Hong Kong for about 2 years. And prior to his departure from Hong Kong, he'd done my training on the Boeing 707. So he knew what I could do, put it that way. So he was home visiting his relatives at Christmas, just before Christmas in 1989. So he said he'd come home, and then he'd be coming back again for Christmas. So there was a party that was held at Chapman Golf Club. Okay. And a friend of mine had an invite, and he invited me and Percy, Madam P. He invited us to join him there. And when I got there, I met Captain Dave Warburton, and he was there. And I said to him, "Oh, what are you doing here?" He said, "Oh, I'm here on holiday." So I said, "Oh," but casually, I just said to him, "You know, when I'm out there, are there any jobs?" He says, "As a matter of fact, we just got a new 707 and we're looking for pilots. Are you still flying the 707? I said, "Yes." And he said to me, "Are you serious about coming to the Far East if I offer you a job, because we are looking for people like you that are already qualified?" I said, "Of course I'm serious." He says, "Right, when I get back, I'll send you the interview, the application form, and we'll have an interview on the phone." I said, "Yeah, yes, you just do that and I'll be waiting." And sure, true to his word, a few days later, when he got back to Hong Kong, he sent me the application form, and then he arranged an HR interview on the phone. And that was it. I was accepted there and then.
Did they ask you to spell discotheque again?
No, thankfully, no.
Okay.
No, but the thing was, Captain Warburton was a little bit hesitant because he thought, well, we were at a crossroads. Air Zimbabwe had just obtained the Boeing 767. So it was brand new, coming in from Boeing. And I was to leave Zimbabwe in November to go and train on this aeroplane. I would be a captain on it, and it was brand new aeroplane, Boeing 767, or leave Zimbabwe and go to Air Hong Kong and still stay on the 707, which was now becoming old technology. And all the people around me in Zimbabwe, my colleagues in Air Zimbabwe, said I was a bit stupid, I was foolish. The airline was, growing. They've got these brand new 767s. How can you leave at a time like this, and so on? But I looked forward at the bigger picture. I wanted to go somewhere where I knew I'd fly around the world, and I knew I would get to fly the Boeing 747, which is what I really wanted to fly anyway.
And you were based at the famous Kai Tak, an airport that's well known for its landings, which are well known for their degree of difficulty. So much so that I would say that the approach is a blend of thrill, satisfaction, and a bit of caution right there. What were Kai Tak landings like for you?
They're always exciting. And what we used to say is it's challenging, it's exciting, but it didn't matter what the weather was. It was always exhilarating, even if the weather was nice and calm. And the most challenging weather we got out of Kai Tak was always when the weather was coming from the southeast, because the runway direction was 130, runway 13. But if the weather was coming from the south, it made the turn a little bit difficult, because as you made the turn, the wind was pushing you into the high ground, into the mountain, as it were. So you really had to time that quite right. In fact, you couldn't land into Hong Kong unless you had observed an actual landing sitting on the jump seat. You had to observe one first, sitting on the jump seat. Then you had to do a simulator training in the aeroplane. Then you had to make one actual visit in the aeroplane and do a landing with a senior captain giving you guidance to come into Kai Tak before you got the clearance to fly into Kai Tak.
And what have been some of your most memorable moments from the cockpit? Could you tell us about that?
What's a memorable moment? I've had several.
Maybe just one.
Okay. One I can say is as a young pilot taking off from Masvingo in Zimbabwe. I was flying the Viscount. And as we took off, one of the engines basically failed and caught fire. I was the pilot flying. We climbed away. The captain, remember him clearly, Robin Cartwright, didn't interfere. He just said, "You keep doing what you're doing, keep flying." We declared an emergency. We went around downwind. I continued to fly on 3 engines, came round onto final approach, and I did the landing as well. You know,
Wow.
ordinarily you'd think the captain would say, I have control, I'll take control and do this landing. But he just left me alone. He said, you're doing a good job. I'll let you do this. And I landed the airplane, 3 engines, and we managed to get out safely. So I'll never forget it. Yeah.
That's one memory right there.
Yes.
And now everyone in aviation is going through an unprecedented time. 2020
Yes.
came with a lot of unexpected challenges around the world. In what way has COVID impacted your professional and personal life?
Well, professionally, once I'm in the cockpit, nothing's changed. Once we get into the flight deck, everything's as usual. It's the process of getting into the flight deck and leaving the flight deck to come home. The process of getting into the flight deck is now obviously masks, temperature checks, isolation, separation until the airplane doors are closed. We can't take the masks off. We have to keep that way. And now, of course, we've recently been doing what we call contactless transits. So if by that, I mean, if I leave Hong Kong and go to Tokyo, for example, when I get to Tokyo, we've got electronic maintenance logs. I fill in all the data in there. I've got to take pictures of the engine page, the hydraulics page, and take photos of those in the iPad, which is the electronic maintenance log as well. I, as a pilot now, does the fire test, which ordinarily is done by the engineers. Make sure we get a pass for the fire test, take a photo of that. Then I've got to take the photo of the emergency escape slide to make sure it's in position and the pin is in the correct place. And then we take the maintenance log and put it at the top of the stairs and close the door immediately. Nobody's allowed on the upper deck. We see nobody at all. Everything is done by intercom. They fill in the maintenance log, refuel, put it back at the top of the stairs and tell us it's there. We go to the back, retrieve it, close the door immediately. And essentially I go to Tokyo and come back and we don't see anybody. We have complete no contact. So it's quite different. And we're trusting that the airplane has been checked. The external check has been done correctly by the engineers who are qualified. So I'll obviously accept that, no problem at all. But it is a different way of operating. That's all I can say. And then so far I've done nearly 80 COVID-19 tests. So I've been poked in the nose and my throat swabbed and so on for nearly 80 times every time I get back. So for example, the last week I did 5 trips in the region. I went to Seoul, I went to Osaka, I went to Tokyo, and every time I came back, I did a COVID-19 test and got poked and so on. So it's difficult in that sense, but we soldier on, nevertheless.
We do. And I know that you're also a great lover of the 747. How did you respond to the news of its accelerated retirement?
I don't know. I think the world has gone the same way. Aviation has gone that way, but all other industries have gone that way. There's a constant need for more money, more productivity. Everything is about the bottom line. So the 4-engined airplanes have been removed, not because they were unsafe. In fact, they were very safe, but a case had to be made to justify removing 4-engined aircraft. Because when 4-engined aircraft were introduced, the biggest thing that was pushed then was that safety. You've got 4 motors, so if one fails, you've still got 3 transatlantic crossings. It was good to have 4 engines. The safety aspect was pushed until the bottom line, the money, came into it. They started making justifications by talking about reliability of engines. It's safe to fly with 2 engines. It's absolutely safe. I wouldn't put it past them in 20 years' time when they say 1 engine is fine, just 1 big engine is fine, the reliability is excellent, and so on, because it's all about the bottom line. So it's a shame. That's what I think. That so that's, but as I say, in other industries, it's the same. Everything's about the bottom line.
And you actually got the chance to meet the late Joe Sutton, the father of the 747. This was back in 2016. What was that meeting like? And what do you think he would have to say about the retirement of his beloved aircraft?
Yeah, we did ask him that, actually. We said, what do you think about the airlines we asked Joe. I actually asked him. I said, Joe, what do you think about the airlines retiring 747? He said the same thing as I've just told you about the safety aspect. He said they've made all the justifications to remove 4-engined aircraft because they're worried about making as much money as they can. But he also said he was disappointed to see it go, of course, because it was his baby. And at the same time, he was pleased that the 747-8 was still going and being ordered by airlines and so on. So he said it was still around. The other question I asked him, I said, if you were your young self today, what sort of industry do you think would be the most interesting industry to go into and study? And he said to us, he said he'd go into the medical field, as in keyhole type surgery and nano types technology. He thinks that's the way forward that the world is going. He thinks that would be the most exciting thing he'd probably go into today if he was a young 19-year-old.
I think that's a nice insight for aspiring aviators. And just talking about that, you communicate quite frequently with your large and growing following on social media, really bringing them right onto the flight deck for a live experience. And it's very clear to see that there are many young and aspiring pilots who enjoy and benefit from engaging with you. And it's also clear to see that you genuinely want to help and support them as well. What inspired you to do that, and how did it start?
Actually, it started as a bit of fun, because I said, "Oh, what's this Instagram? Let me see what I can talk about on Instagram." So I actually started off with just one of the funny videos. You may have seen it, of me running on the main deck of the 747. I just went to the back and ran to the front. I just said, let me show people how big this aircraft is. And I'll try and run from the back of the airplane to the front in a shorter time than Usain Bolt, just as a joke. That's essentially how it started. And I posted that. And then I had thousands of views.
I think the person who took the video said you didn't do it under 10 seconds, you did 57 seconds.
I know. Yeah, I know. I said to him, yeah, but if I do the same thing in flight, I'll be doing 8 miles a minute. So I'll be doing so many thousands of kilometers per hour. I'd be much faster than Usain Bolt if I did the same run in flight.
Yeah.
I'd be doing 100 meters in less than a second, pretty much. So I just thought, I'd give back somehow, some way of giving back. People do different things. They do charities, they help other people in different ways. So I thought I'd do this and, share some knowledge and help aspiring youngsters come up and gain the knowledge and at least get them encouraged into coming to the industry, as it were. Yeah.
And do you ever feel any pressure from the responsibility and the power of the messages that you share with the next generation? Yes,
I do. Yeah, every time I've got to be so careful how and what I say, because the young minds are gulping it all up. So it's important that what I say is the truth, and what I say is honest, and what I say is factual in terms of what a particular technology may be, rather than something made up. This is what the industry is, so that they ingrain in them the safety aspect of operating aircraft, engineering, whatever it is. It's all about factual stuff and the truth.
And what message would you like to give to aspiring aviators, especially trying to enter the industry today?
Well, I'll say something which perhaps only you will understand at the moment when I say it first, before I describe what I mean. Kumanya akusikushika.
I get that one.
Okay. So if I translate it into English, it's a Zimbabwean proverb. What I'm saying is, getting there in a hurry doesn't mean you've arrived when you get there. Maybe that's the only translation. Yeah. So getting there in a hurry doesn't mean you've arrived. Yeah. And so the method. And the message is that the youngsters of today, just from my own observation, don't want the climb. They want to get to the top without the climb to get there. So they finish aviation college, and a year later in the airline, they want to be captains. And there's no substitute for experience. They really must understand that this is aviation, this is airplanes. You're dealing with people's lives, not just in the airplane. You're dealing with people's lives on the ground. There are people on the ground who are minding their own business, nothing to do with you. And if you mess up there, you're going to crash into their houses, you're going to land on their cars. So it's not just about you and the airplane and the passengers on board. It's the people on the ground that you're protecting too by doing the right thing. And there's no substitute for experience.
I think that's a very strong message, especially for young aspiring aviators. And maybe just moving from that, there's a special Czech pilot who travels with you on most of your flights, and he does make appearances sometimes on your social media. And some say he's the one actually. Some say he's the one actually flying the aircraft. How far true is that? And what's his story?
Oh, I went and visited a Hong Kong junior aviation academy here in Hong Kong. They invited me to come there and have a look at their setup and just give them some feedback about what I thought their idea was. What they're trying to do is inspire youngsters, young kids, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, to start loving aviation from a young age, because Hong Kong is lacking in that too. So it's just a little thing, and they play games and with a little sort of simulator thing. So they gave me this bear with my name on it, and they said, we prepared this bear for you to keep, and we'd like you to be flying with this bear wherever you go. Please take it along with you and take pictures with it, so that it's the most flown bear around the world. So it doesn't have a name yet. I just call it the Czech captain at the moment.
The Czech captain. And I believe he's a citizen of the world now.
Yes, he's a citizen of the world. Doesn't come from anywhere. Comes from anywhere in the world. Yes.
Very strong story for him. Obet, thank you for sharing your journey with us today. It's been a really interesting flight around your career. And not only is the Airtime team grateful to you for taking the time, but I know that the audience will find it all very interesting and inspiring for the future. Although that brings us to the end of our interview, it is not the end. I would now like to invite the Airtime Chief Executive, Richard Stevenson, to join us from London, as he would like to make a special announcement. Richard, over to you.
Well, Michael, thank you very much indeed. And Obet, thank you, as Michael said. So many people around the world will find your story and your words today inspiring. And we all know just how seriously you take that and all of the work that you've done to inspire the next generation of aviators. And I know that I speak on behalf of everybody at Aerotime, I'm sure at Cathay Pacific, and the wider aviation world, in just wanting to say thank you to you and to acknowledge that contribution that you've made over a very lengthy career, because so many people have benefited from it. And thinking about all of that, I have to now be honest with you, Obet, and tell you that we've actually been keeping a bit of a secret from you. And that's not always a very easy thing to do. You see, not only did we want to interview you and hear your story and, pass on everything that you're talking about, all of your advice to all of those people watching, but we also wanted to say a very big thank you on behalf of that huge aviation community around the world for everything that you do. We've all looked at your social media and we can see the impact that you have. And not a day goes by when Michael doesn't tell me another story about another pilot that you're interacting with through Instagram or something else. So we really wanted to make sure that we said thank you on behalf of all of those people. And it's with that in mind that led the Aerotime Global Executive Committee to agree to present you with an Aerotime Aviation Achievement Award. And this is the award that we are presenting to you today, Obet.
Well, thank you very much.
And I'd like to read you the citation that is on this certificate here. And it says, in recognition
I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
It says, in recognition of his dedication to the aviation industry, for his devotion and efforts to promoting pilot education and diversity, for his focus on supporting his colleagues and the aviation community, and for being a beacon during the pandemic by setting an example that is encouraging and inspiring the next generation of aviators. The Aerotime Global Executive Committee recognizes the positive influence of these efforts and the significance of the impact on the aviation industry and its people, both today and into the future. So Obet, congratulations, well done, and again, thank you. I'm just really sorry that I can't travel to Hong Kong to present this certificate and the trophy to you in person, but I really hope that at some point in the not too distant future, we'll have the opportunity to do that, because I really would love to shake your hand in a very COVID-friendly way and to hand over this certificate and the trophy that goes with it. And I hope that when you have this certificate and you display it somewhere, it will act as a reminder to you of the gratitude of so many people for all of your work, for your efforts, and for your encouragement of that next generation of aviators. And on behalf of all of them and all of us, Obet, thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really, really pleased to receive the award, but I'm humbled at the same time that you feel that sort of way about my efforts to promote aviation and inspire the youngsters. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Michael, back to you.
Thank you for joining Aerotime today to share your story and for continuing to inspire pilots all around the world. And congratulations on your award. That brings us to the end of this Aerotime interview, but be sure to tune in for more articles and interviews being published this week to recognize and celebrate the contribution and success of pilots in our industry. Thank you for joining us. My name is Michael Jonga, and you've been watching Aerotime. Goodbye.